Here we'll talk about cognitive development during adolescence. Specifically, we'll go over Piaget's theory on formal operational thought, some of the information processing theories, reflection on the changes that happen with our cognitive abilities, the importance of secondary education in our adolescent development, and then finish up with moral development during adolescence. So we'll talk about Piaget more on the next slide, but Piaget's view, very much constructivist view. Information processing theorists, they, if you remember, they view development as a continuous process, meaning slow, gradual changes and improvements that are measured quantitatively. So they're looking at various mechanisms like attention, memory, processing speed, and so on and so forth, and measuring how those improve as we age. Each mechanism promotes advances in the others. So things like an increase in working memory, improvements in inhibition, gains in selective and flexible attention, and improvements in our cognitive self-regulation. Researchers regard metacognition as central to adolescent cognitive development. So let's talk about each of these in turn. So attention, both our selective attention, being able to specifically focus on important, relevant information, is improving at this time. Divided attention, we're not great at dividing our attention, but the things that we can do to divide our attention, if it's something that we can learn so well that it becomes very automatic, it takes up much less of our cognitive workspace, of our working memory, and so we're able to do simple things while we do something that requires more attention. We can't really do two things that require a lot of attention well at the same time. Our memory is improving, so our capacity as well as the length improves. So that working memory or short-term memory, the capacity increases in adolescence compared to what it was in childhood, and our long-term memory, how long we can hold information, improves as well. Our processing speed increases, so our ability to actually think through information, make sense of it, increases and then levels off during adolescence. We become much better at organizing information and using strategies to help us organize information and to store it into long-term memory through things like mnemonic devices. And then again, that metacognition, or thinking about our thinking. So this is being able to critically evaluate, hey, is my study strategy working, or are the mnemonic devices I'm trying to use working? If not, I need to change them, right? So thinking about our thinking process, planning ahead, and making improvements. In Piaget's view, around the age of 11, we enter the formal operational stage, his last stage of cognitive developmental theory. Formal operational stage is where we develop the capacity for abstract thinking and systematic scientific reasoning. So here we are much better able to use logic to solve problems, even if those problems are abstract. with inductive reasoning, that's when a specific observation or specific comments from people in authority are used to draw general conclusions. That emerges in childhood. Sometimes it's also referred to as bottom-up reasoning. And it is prone to error. So if you're saying something like, well, I eat this berry and it's sweet, this berry, it's sweet, therefore all berries must be sweet, which isn't necessarily the case, right? They can definitely be underripe, they can be sour. They, they definitely don't all taste the same. Deductive reasoning, on the other hand, which we become capable of during adolescence, refers to reasoning that begins with a general principle and then proposes specific conclusions. So a top-down processing, if you will. So we can go from saying something like, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? So this deductive reasoning, that is the type of reasoning that is used when you have to do proofs in math, right? So you're starting out with these general principles, with some definitions, with some axioms, and then you have to work down to, that's why the measure of angle A is the same as, I'm blanking on the word, not similar, but equivalent to the measure of angle D or whatever, right? So adolescents capable of going from, or starting with a hypothesis, and then deducing logical testable inferences from that hypothesis, unlike concrete operational children who have to begin with reality and making predictions about a situation. Adolescents can start with possibility and then proceed to reality. And this is demonstrated by the pendulum problem. So the Piaget would give adolescents some different lengths of string, some different weights, and an apparatus so that they could make pendulums, and would ask them what variables might possibly affect the speed with which a pendulum swings through its arc. So what they'll do is they'll isolate and then test each variable, as well as testing the variables in combination. And eventually they should deduce that the weight of the object, the height from which it's released, and how forcefully it's pushed have no effect on the speed with which the pendulum swings through its arc. Only the string length makes a difference. Adolescents capable of that hypothetical thinking using deductive reasoning, capable of abstract thinking, realizing that reality is not black and white, right? There's shades of gray, there's what if scenarios, and then metacognition, as mentioned before, being much better about thinking about their thinking process, being critical of that, possibly needing to make changes. Elkind noted that because adolescents are better able to reflect on their own abstract thoughts, combined with the physical and psychological changes that they're going through, that they start to think more about themselves, and this new form of egocentrism arises. So kind of based on Piaget's idea of egocentrism, but instead of being unable to take another person's perspective, like Piaget described the pre-operational child as, adolescent egocentrism refers to a heightened self-focus in which adolescents think that other people think about them more than they actually do. So they're having trouble distinguishing their own thoughts and others' perspectives, thinking, that other people are noticing flaws that they themselves notice. And so this leads to some distortions in their thinking. First, the imaginary audience. This refers to adolescents' belief that their appearance is the focus of everyone else's attention and concern. Although some may say it's not so imaginary if they're often on social media. But yeah, the idea that, everybody is, judging me for the zit on my forehead, or because my clothes aren't as fashionable, or things like that. When in reality, probably a lot of other people are worried about their own zit and their own clothes, rather than focusing on you. Another error in thinking, the personal fable. This refers to adolescents' belief that they are special, unique, and related to this, invulnerable. And so this personal fable, this belief that they are the main character in their own story, right? And that everybody's watching them. They often think others can't understand their thoughts and feelings, right? What I'm going through is so different, is so unique. You can't possibly understand. You don't get what what I'm going through, right? Related to this is the invincibility fable, the idea that probabilistic consequences don't apply to one's self, right? So the thought here is that bad things, I get that bad things can happen, but they won't happen to me, right? That happens to other people. And this is thought to play a role in why adolescents are willing to engage in risky behavior. The information processing perspective's dual process model refers to having two distinct networks for processing information, intuitive and analytic. Our intuitive thought process is automatic, unconscious, very fast. It's much more based on our experiences and our emotions. Analytic thought, on the other hand, is deliberate, conscious, and rational. Intuitive thinking tends to be easier and is commonly used in everyday life. It's more often used by children and adolescents as compared to analytic thinking. And so this idea that teens are relying more on that intuitive thought might be partly why they are engaged or willing to engage in risky behaviors. They do put more emphasis, more weight on potential rewards of actions, particularly social rewards, which they are very sensitive to, and not put as much weight on long-term consequences, where you need to take more of an analytic thought process to think about those. Developing relativistic thinking, or questioning absolute truth, begins to increase in adolescence. They're able to really ponder things that maybe have been presented to them as truth, and think about if they really believe it, if that really applies to them. So, for example, it's fairly common for teenagers to go through a period of religious doubt, really think about what rules make sense to them, that with their own values, as well as common sense, as well as thinking about things like cultural relativism, realizing that different cultures value different things. And that's, different doesn't mean bad, but we will see a realization that, yeah, things aren't black and white, right? There are shades of gray. In terms of education, the transitions from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school can be difficult for students, both academically and socially, as Teachers tend to be seen as less supportive, and schools are larger and more impersonal. Many factors influence students' academic achievement. Their families' beliefs and expectations play a role, as do their friends. If an adolescent has high achieving, motivated friends, then he, she, or they is more likely to be the same. But the reverse holds true as well. If your friends aren't as motivated, you're also less likely to be motivated. Sex influences success as well. Females do tend to earn higher grades, tend to try harder, and are more intrinsically motivated than males on average. Generally, female students also tend to exhibit more anxiety about school in trying to please teachers, whereas male students tend to be more confident and not value adult feedback regarding academic performance. However, there is also a subset of females who identify with sexualized gendered stereotypes that girls should be sexy rather than smart, and they tend to be less motivated in school and be more skeptical of the usefulness of an education. Both female and male high school students spend similar amounts of time in class doing homework and working. Male students generally tend to spend more time on media and communication activities, playing sports, and sleeping. Female students tend to spend more time on leisure and religious activities and on grooming. Again, talking about the differences between middle school and high school, we are seeing that the difficulties of puberty really starting in middle school or potentially even earlier. That schedule change really bring on more stressors as well as social changes. Peer expectations are really important. The rise of bullying, particularly cyberbullying, has become a serious concern. The technology allows us to be distant and potentially anonymous. And so people kind of get this feeling that, that it's okay to say things to people that they wouldn't say to someone's face, or they wouldn't say if people knew who exactly was writing these things. So a large percentage, the majority of teens have been the target of cyberbullying, particularly name calling and rumor spreading being the most common forms of harassment. In high school, those general changes that are happening, more analytical thinking is being practiced to help prepare them for adult life. They are spending more time with their peers than with their family. Attaining their diploma helps to predict later success in life, and is also an indicator of how well they're adjusting their academic achievement, an indicator of how well they're adjusting. In terms of moral reasoning during adolescence, their independence is increasing. They are questioning things more, as mentioned earlier. This could be a time where they might move to Kohlberg's conventional or even post-conventional stage of morality, where the post-conventional stage, where morals are determined by self-chosen principles that apply universally. The things that influence adolescents' moral reasoning, their parents, how they were raised, the media, school, their peers, particularly their close friends, have quite a lot of influence over how they view things as right or wrong. Practice question 3. Given the following examples, which of these students is actively engaging in metacognition? A, Retta, who is practicing study skills using techniques like mnemonic devices. B, Liana, who realizes the problem-solving techniques she is using will lead to undesirable consequences and changes her plan of action. C, Joanna, who multitasks while studying, listening to music, and switching between homework subjects to prevent fatigue. Or D, Niam, whose typing speed has improved to the point where he can transcribe whole sentences without needing to pause his work. If you said B, Liana, who realizes the problem-solving technique she's using will lead to undesirable consequences and change her plan of action, you are correct.